As you know, Peter Gleeson's brother died recently, and Gleeso, of course, is our dear friend here at Sky News who comes up after this show each and every night. He's a titan of Queensland media, and he's one of the most decent people that I've ever met in this business. And Gleeso, I wanted to get him on tonight because he wrote the most incredible piece today in the papers, in the Courier Mail, you can read it online, about how his position has now shifted on assisted dying, on euthanasia legislation. Gleeso's in Brizzy right now. Great man, again, sympathies to your family about what you had to see. But let's talk about that journey. How have you changed and how have you landed where you do after seeing the experience you did with your bro?
Well, Paul, I was agnostic on voluntary assisted dying. And the reason I was agnostic on voluntary assisted dying was because I'd never been subjected to it. I'd never been subjected to someone who I loved dearly dying in circumstances where I felt that the last 24 to 48 hours was certainly not necessary. When we talk about life and how precious life is, Paul, and we strive to have great lives and enjoy ourselves, in those final twilight hours, in a situation where Daryl, my brother, was dying of myelodysplastic syndrome, which is like leukemia, he'd run his race. Daryl was a mad punter, Paul. He loved a beer. He was a larrikin. He was a terrific Australian. And I wanted to, in that piece yesterday and today, I wanted to really amplify just what a terrific Australian he was. And, you know, he was one of those guys, they're everywhere in this country, like a beer, like a bet, just enjoy themselves. And in many ways I wanted to celebrate his life, Paul, but I also wanted to make it important that people who are not in a situation where they've ever had to confront something like this understand that it's not simple, it's not easy, it's challenging, and it tugs at the heartstrings. And I think if people are informed, and we are in a very, very fortunate position, Paul, you and I, where we're on telly, we can write newspaper articles, we can go on radio, and people can understand where we're coming from on particular issues. And on this particular issue, I feel that, you know, we've got laws in WA, we've got laws in Victoria, we're about to have a debate in Queensland, and that will go to Parliament in the next 3 or 4 months. If people can understand that, and I say in that story, I say in that article, and it's an often quoted axiom, you don't know what you don't know. And until you're in that situation, you don't know how you're going to react. But I can tell you now, Paul, if someone had said to me, there were voluntary assisted dying laws in place in New South Wales on June the 9th, I would have said to Mum, and Mum would have, I spoke to Mum about this afternoon, she would have said, yep, I would have been with you. We would have said, okay, let's send him off to a better place, about 18 to 24 hours before he ultimately passed, because he was gone, mate. He was, you know, he'd run his race.
Well, and also it's that thing, Gleeso, where, look, you know, I've supported the idea of the ultimate right being your right to not have to leave this world in pain. I fully support these laws. And I get everyone who has all of the obvious concerns, and I believe that one of the things that should be written into all of these laws is any form of coercion or anything that clearly shows somebody who doesn't want this to happen, it should be treated like murder, right? No question about it. But what I am also always profoundly moved by is my right to say yes doesn't trump your right to say no, but it works the other way too. Your right to say no shouldn't trump my right to say yes. And again, as long as, you know, there is no such thing as perfect, but come on, like there has to be a better way, and you have to be able to have the choice. Now, again, I think it's pretty amazing what this country's done in the past couple of years, where there was more aggro on the streets or on the media or in the public about whether two blokes could get married, as opposed to at exactly the same time, Victoria made a decision about assisted dying. Tasmania's passed it, South Australia's passed it, WA's passed it. It will pass in New South Wales, it will pass in Queensland. I know the Territory has different issues about who ultimately rules there. So I do not want to be disrespectful to people who disagree with what we're saying right now, but what I am saying is that anyone who misuses the system, well, the people who do that to their loved one, they go to jail. But to everyone else, please give us the chance to determine how we leave this world.
Yeah, and I'm the most pro-life person in the world, but this is not about life. This is about dying. This 100%. Is about those last frenetic, challenging hours. And the big challenge in Queensland, on this issue, Paul, is for the left of the Labor Party, who we know can step overboard when it comes to this sort of stuff. You know, particularly with the abortion stuff, I thought that was disgraceful. But if they do this in a measured and controlled and proper way, and that doesn't really sort of fit nicely and snugly with the left of the Labor Party, the left faction of the Labor Party, but if it's done properly and the proper medical and ethical checks are put in place, and the person who is the subject of the voluntary assisted dying order has you know, in sane mind said, yes, absolutely, give the authority to my next of kin to make this call. I think it's terrific legislation, and I think it should be uniform throughout the country, and I think it's synonymous with a progressive modern society.
Well, also, I mean, you know, there couldn't be an issue that has polled them this consistently for this long in this many jurisdictions. It's about 70% of people are okay with it. And to your point too, again, no one should, the law shouldn't be to force religious-based healthcare systems or aged care system to force them to do something that is against their faith. I don't want people to be forced into that scenario, the same as abortions and all the rest of it. But again, your right to say no doesn't trump my right to say yes, and the other way around. Gleeson, it was a beautiful piece of writing. You are just a magnificent brother. And such a talented man, being able to write the way you did and to represent your mum as you did on telly tonight, mate. I love you, brother, as always, and I look forward to eventually being able to fist bump, and then we'll work up to a hug, okay?
Good on you, mate. You're a champion.
Good on you, mate. You'll see him in about 35 minutes from now, Peter Gleeson, on the front page.